Welcome to a new video. Today I'm going to share with you my Super Quant, or Super Quantum I guess, deck profile. And Super Quantum is a very beloved deck because of one and one reason only. They're basically the Power Rangers of Yu-Gi-Oh, which is a really cool thing. It's basically supposed to be, I guess, a reference for Super Sentai for Japan, but for us specifically, people will consider this Power Rangers because this is our version of Power Rangers in the more Western world, I guess. Although I'm not really in the Western world that much because I live in around Europe, but you know what I mean. Anyway, that's pretty much does it for that. But before we jump right into the video itself, I'm going to remind you that if you want to see more videos like this, please consider hitting the subscribe button. It's helped us a ton. Let me know in the comments down below what do you think about the list, what do you think about, like, you know, what I should change, what is a cool tech to maybe use, and also give a like to the video if you enjoyed. And without further ado, let's jump right into the video itself. Alright, so starting things off, we're going to start things by talking about the monsters first, obviously, or the pilots of the archetype, and we're going to start things off with the 12 most important cards in your deck beside well, the level 1 monster, apparently, which is 3 copies of white layer, 3 copies of red layer, 3 copies of green layer, and then, of course, the 3 copies of blue layer, which is basically the 12 pilots of the archetype. Now, of course, there are 4 of them, but you need to play 3 of each and every single one of them, because every single one of them is very important for the archetype. And all of them have their own awesome effects on when normal or special summon, but they also have an effect, all of them, when they're sent to the graveyard regardless, which is really powerful. However, before we'll jump into their own individual effects, I actually want to talk about the field spell for a second, because the field spell is how the deck functions. Basically, the entire idea why I mentioned these are pilots is that these guys have the ability with the field spell, which is very important for them, is that you discard a card with the field spell, and then you summon the corresponding basically mech for them out of the extra deck that have the same level and attribute of them. So for example, let's say we discard a card and we want to summon something above white layer. That's going to be Luster Rex because it's a light rank 7 monster that is correspondent to this particular guy on the field, so that's why we're going to use that. And the entire idea is that it's allowing you to exceed summon without putting too many resources, although you do use your hand a lot as a resource, so that's kind of a weird thing with this, but that's how the deck works. And also, you can send it to the graveyard to allowing you to summon the big boy, which we'll talk about that when we'll get to these spells and traps a little bit more in depth. But the point is, this is how the archetype works, and it's really important. As in the case of each of them individually, blue layer is your searcher for the archetype, which allowing you to add any super quant except itself from your deck to your hand, and it's also a psychic, which is really awesome. However, her grave effect is not the best, but it is good for grind games, although I don't really understand why the shuffle 3 super quants to the deck doesn't have a draw card attached to it. But it is what it is. Konami probably thought that super quant for some reason will be broken. I don't know why. But in the case of blue layer, she's very awesome for that. Green layer, in my opinion, is probably the worst super quant monster, but it's still really important to run at 3. This guy allowing you to normal or special summon any super quant out of your hand when he's normal or special summoned, so that is really nice as a thing. And when he is sent to the graveyard, is allowing you to discard any super quant card to draw a card, which is a great way to trigger their grave effect and get an additional resource, which is really cool. Not the best, but it's still very useful, and it's sometimes a nice way to bait Ash and, or should I say not Ash, Infinite Permanence and Effect Veiler if your opponent will just throw on this because they think you're going to special summon if you have a particular combination of cards in your hand. So that's a pretty interesting thing about this card as well. Red layer is probably the most known super quant monster because of his usage in Monarchs and Infernoble. And besides special summon itself, if you control no monsters for its own archetype, it's allowing you to add from your grave to your hand any super quant card, include itself, which is really cool. So you're able to recover additional resources, which is actually very important to the archetype because of the field spell discarding. And the other effect is that when it's sent to the graveyard, you're able to special summon any super quant monster from your graveyard, excluding itself. So basically any of them excluding itself, but you're not able to activate its effect. It doesn't say its effect negated, but you're not able to activate the effect. It's a different thing. I don't know why they did it like that, but it is what it is. And then for the last monster, White Layer. White Layer is the one that we got as a support a year and a half ago. And this guy is really, really awesome because it's allowing you to discard any of the non-light Super Quant monsters and special summon itself out of the hand. And then the other effect on normal or special summon, he's able to send any Super Quant monster from your deck to the graveyard, including another copy of itself, and basically become the same level and attribute of that card sent to the graveyard. So it can send another copy of itself and it still stay the same. And then when he is sent to the graveyard, he's able to search the most important card in the deck, which is Alphen. So we'll get to that in a second, but that's why White Layer is very, very good for the archetype. You're not always going to use his own special summoning effect, but the fact that you're able to search Alphen is very, very good. And speaking of Alphen, let's talk about this little guy. Now, Alphen is honestly not really that super crazy, important on his normal or special summon, like, his effect on the field that you have. That is once per turn, he's able to target any Super Quant monster, and monsters you control basically become the same level of that monster. It doesn't really matter. The effect that does matter is his Lone Fire Blossom-ish effect, I guess, but not really. It's able to tribute itself, reveal 3 different Super Quant monsters, and then your opponent pick randomly one of them to special summon to your field, and then the 2 others get sent to the graveyard, which is amazing because you are able to get some really, really nice effects triggering off and giving you the ability to just continue your plays and replenish resources, free special summon, get enough monsters on the field for your Link/Xyz plays. So that's why Alphen is really important. Your opponent probably going to try to throw on this like Infinite Permanence or Effect Veil or even an Ash Blossom, but if you're able to resolve this, you're definitely going to be able to start your engine, which is really, really important about this card. And then for the additional supporting monsters, I guess we have 2 copies of Danger Nessie, 2 copies of Mothman, 1 copies of Tsuchinoko, 1 copy of Jackalope, and then the 1 copy of Trick Clown to serve as your basically, I guess, supporting engine for discard, which is really nice because you do need something that triggers with your field spell. Nessie will be able to get another copy of a danger from your deck to your hand. Mothman will be able to discard another card if you need to, and draw a card, and then these 2 are either able to give you more bodies, which is kind of the entire purpose. So this engine is really, really important for the fact that it's able to help you with replenishing resources because of your field spell, so that's why you want to run these guys. And then for the last monster, the additional win condition that we have in the deck, I do run Artifact Scythe. I don't like it that much, not because of, not liking it as a card, but I don't like it because, or should I say in this deck, I don't like it because I don't like it as a card. I think it's just a little bit of too much powerful, at least this format, but it is what it is. We do need to get an extra turn to play. It's a necessary evil, because we do need to have sometimes a turn set up with this and then go all in the next turn, turn 3. So you basically find a way to make a Daggett with 2 monsters, then have a blue layer and turn it into a Grand Pulse with the field spell, and then the Grand Pulse will pop this during the opponent's turn, and there you go. You got yourself to lock the opponent out of the extra deck. Like I said, I don't really 100% like it, but I do understand why it's necessary. But that does it for the monster lineup. Now we'll move on into the spells. And for the spell lineup, we have a pretty decent one of them. We have, first off, 3 copies of Magna Carrier, which is the important field spell, 1 Terraforming to search it, 2 copies of a card that I have to proxy called Peri Rice Map, and then 1 copy of Foolish Burial for your consistency spells. Now, the reason why I consider Foolish Burial a consistency spell, because it's able to send White Layer to your graveyard to search the Alphen, which is really important. Same goes with Peri-Rice Map. You, unlike DDD, don't really care about your life point that much, because DDD already use their life points as a resource, so having something like Peri-Rice Map as an additional thing is very risky. But for a deck like this that just doesn't really do that, it's really, really good, giving yourself an additional 2 copies of Alphen in your hand without awful Foolish Bearer, which kind of serve as a third. And the reason why I don't run this at 3 is because I don't have space and I don't really want too much of the same card, and honestly you just need to resolve it once a game to add it to your hand and start your engine going, so that's why Peri-Rice Map is in here, which I think is really important. Terraforming, like I mentioned, is for the field spell, and the field spell have the first effect that I mentioned, which is discard a card and summon the corresponding Xyz monster on top of the pilot. So for example, white layer, you summon Lester Rex on top of it, because it's the same attribute and rank as the level of that monster. And then the other effect is that it's able to send itself to the graveyard to target 3 Xyz Super Quant monsters in your graveyard or field, and then basically summon with them and all of their materials the big boss monster for the archetype, which is this guy. So this is kind of like your way to summon Great King Magnus without just putting too many resources. And it's kind of a card that I do use its effect, but it's mostly like after I'm using Dagda, because like I said, you do need some way to sometimes set this up, and like going all in on this is not always the most wisest thing to do. But that does it for this lineup of cards. Now we'll move on into the rest of the spells. And for the rest of the spells, we have the following, which is 2 Emergency Teleport, because we do have Blue Lair, 1 Monster Reborn, because I do want to revive stuff, 1 copy of Cold by the Grave, because it's Cold by the Grave, and I do want to sometimes stop my opponent if I'll draw it in my hand. 3 copies of Dark Ruler No More to help me break boards, and then 3 copies of Infinite Permanence, which I actually want to switch for triple Tactic Talents when I will get them, but 3 Infinite Permanence to just stop my opponent or just give me something. The reason why I want this to actually become triple Tactics, because triple Tactics will allow me to go playing first regardless, and honestly today's standards like Dark Ruler No More will allow me to basically break boards anyway, and triple Tactic Talents does the same thing, and it's also helping you to kind of draw a few more cards into your deck. So that's why I'm kind of like, I'm not 100% sure about the Infinite Permanence, but for now, I'm actually playing these, and I think these all makes a lot of sense. I don't really need to explain these that much. But that does it for the main deck, for the cards. Now we'll move on into the extra deck, and for the extra deck, let's get started with the big boy himself, which is 1 copy of Great King Magnus. I think I need to explain them a little bit by himself before we jump into the other ones. This guy is absolutely bonkers. This guy, when he's sent to the graveyard, he's able to special summon the 3 Super Quant Mech Beast monsters from your graveyard, or should I say Xyz monsters from your graveyard, and then you are able to either use the field spell to summon him again after shuffling back into the extra deck or something like that, or, amazingly, you're also able to use this basically for the other Link monsters that kind of take advantage of 3 Xyz monsters, which I think you know what I'm talking about, but if you don't, we'll talk about it a little bit later. But beside that, this guy with 2 or more materials during your main phase, as a quick effect, during the main phase, any main phase, as a quick effect is allowed to shuffle any card on the field to the deck as a quick effect by detaching a material. 4 materials, he's basically unaffected by card effects except Super Quant cards. Of course, it can be tribute by a Kaiju, but it's still really powerful. And then the last effect, which is the most, like, bullcrap stupid effect, is basically, it's a Colossus. It's became before Colossus, but you know what I mean. It's becoming a walking mistake that your opponent cannot really do anything about it. It's already becomes broken with 4 materials, but when it gets to 6 materials, it's absolutely a beast, that's why this card is really powerful. And then for the rest of the Xyz monsters, we first have 2 copies of Lester Rex, 2 copies of Magna Liger, which I'm not actually 100% sure I want to keep Magna Liger at 2, but for now I like it. 1 copy for Ouroboros, and 1 copy of Grampulse for the Xyz monsters for the Super Quants themselves. Basically, all they do is that they cannot attack if they don't have an Xyz material, and their effect becomes a quick effect if they have their corresponding pilot as a material, as well as once per turn, you're able to basically attach Super Quant monster from your hand or field to it as a material, which is really nice for it, or should I say Super Quantum, actually the pilots themselves and nothing else. So as for their own individual effects, this is an MST, this is a Book of Moon, this is pop a card on the field, and this just becomes Effect Veiler, which is really nice. So all of these are very powerful for what they do. I wish the archetype has a little bit of an easier way to make them, but they're still very good as cards, and I do like the fact that their effects are quick effects only because, or should I say, only when you have the corresponding pilot, so they cannot be abused out of other archetypes, so that is actually kind of nice. And then for the last two Xyz monsters, one is Abyss Dweller and one Double A Zeus. I actually maybe want to bump Double A Zeus to 2 and cut this completely, because Abyss Dweller is good, but not always that good in this deck. Double A Zeus just make a lot of sense in this deck, because you have a lot of Xyz monsters, they're going to attack, sometimes you're just able to just put this on top of them, after also attaching another material if you need to, and you have 2 materials Zeus, or even more, depending on the monster. And then Abyss Dweller is just, I thought, makes sense, because, you know, grave decks and just want to deal with them. And then for the Link monsters, which we actually do use, we have first 1 copy of Linkuriboh, 1 copy of IP Masquerena, 1 copy of Dagda for the combo, I guess, or should I say for the artifact Scythe, 1 Unicorn, 1 Mech King Blaster Magna, and 1 copy in Infinitrack Fortress Mega Collapse. Now, Linkuriboh doesn't really need a whole lot of explanation. You turn the Alpha into it if it's getting negated, or just in general if you need to. IP is just to help you bring out a Unicorn during the opponent's turn for an interruption, either an additional card in hand or whatever. Dagda is for the artifact Scythe, and then these two are the big, I guess, payoffs for the archetype, I guess, in the terms of the Link department, but not really. This guy is unaffected by, or should I say, is not destroyed by an opponent card effects, which is kind of nice. And then when an Xyz Super Quant mech is summoned to one of its zones that is not from the mechs that you already control, you get to draw a card, which is pretty cool. And when it dies one of its links, the monsters on its link, it's able to summon the corresponding pilot from your deck, which is, I guess, really nice as well. But the problem with this guy, even though I like to run this at 1, I'm actually considering maybe cutting this guy, because, you know, the idea of drawing more cards when you basically summon mech beasts is really cool, because you can just, I don't know, just summon, for example, a Rex into his zone, get a draw, and still keep the resource with the field spell. The only problem with this guy is that it's required 3 materials to begin with. I understand why, definitely, because of the idea of, like, 3, and for the fact that, like, you know, you want to have 3 arrows for helping you summon the Magnus. I understand why, but it's still, I think it's a little bit too much sometimes, so that's why we have Dagda as an additional win condition and this in a later turn, if we need to. And the other thing that I don't understand is that why this doesn't search the field spell. Like, we do need a card that searches the field spell beside Blue Layer, and this could have been the perfect card that we can sink into all the resources, search the field spell, then maybe even have another monster on the field, and then start the plays regardless. So that's why I'm kind of just asking myself why the heck this doesn't search the field spell, but I digress. And then for the last monster, Mega Collapse, like I said, when your Magnus dies, you summon 3 Xyz back, you summon this becomes an annoying boss monster that is unaffected by anything except Xyz monsters, at least in the case of monster effects, and it's also able to steal your opponent monsters and help you bring back your own Xyz monsters and start building a board again, which is really, really powerful. But that does it for the extra deck and does it for the deck profile as itself. Honestly, I kind of wanted to explain this a little bit more in detail, because I know that there are some people who are confused when it comes to Super Quants, because Super Quants is a different kind of Xyz deck compared to other Xyz decks. It's not like take 2 monsters the same level Xyz summon. It has a very interesting gimmick with the pilots, which I think that's why people really like them that much. Although I wish they would get an additional wave of legacy support that will fix them. Just like Predator Plans get their second wave of legacy support pretty soon after their Immortal Destiny, I think the set of the Legendary Duelist was. They got a second wave of support, so how about these guys will also get a little bit of love, because I think they deserve it. But that pretty much does it for the deck list itself. Let's move on into the next deck choices. Alright, so jumping right into this, which is the last part of the video always, which is the next deck choices. We have the 3 returning decks, which is Lyrolosk, Magic Key, and Earth Machines. And then for the 4th option, I think I'm going to throw in Speedroids, because I do like Speedroids a lot. I do miss the Speedroid Scratch still, but I can proxy it for a little bit for a while if you guys want to. And the deck I think is really cool as well. So let me know in the comments down below which one of these decks you want to see me first. Lyrolosk probably might recommend you to let me wait until the ban list, but if you want to see it very, very much, let me know in the comments down below, because I will do it regardless. But yeah, these are the 3, or should I say 4 options: Magic Key, Lyrolosk, Infinitrax, and lastly, Speedroids. Let me know in the comments down below again, what do you want me to do for the next video. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Let me know in the comments down below what you think. And remember, creativity is the key in this game. Have a good day, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.